Okay, thanks. So yeah, as you probably saw in the email, guys, we're going to be hearing from Alessia and from Shira, and we are going to be recording this call so that those people who were not able to attend today can still watch it afterwards. If you are not comfortable appearing on camera, you can turn your camera off, just so you're aware. If you have any questions that pop up, basically the format we're going to do is Shira is going to speak for 20 minutes and we'll have Q&A at the end, and Alessia is going to speak for up to 20 minutes as well with a Q&A at the end. Just for ease, and I don't know if you can tell I'm in a noisy place, we're going to mute all the mics. So if you do have any questions that come up over the course of the chat and you want to make sure they don't get lost, you can type them into the chat function on Zoom and then they're there and they're parked. Or you can just, hold on to them yourself, and we'll have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of each chat, if that makes sense. I think it does. Yeah. So we're going to start, first of all, we're going to hear from Shira, who is in Haifa, in Israel. Take it away.
Awesome. Okay, well, first of all, thank you guys so much for having me. I know it's scary in the guide world to venture into something new, especially when we're used to being outside and pointing at things. To suddenly be in our living rooms pointing at things feels very weird. So first of all, kudos for taking that leap. My name is Shira. I'm calling in from Haifa. And you can probably tell from my accent that I was not born and raised here. I was actually raised closer to Alessia's park background. I'm originally from New Jersey, and I've been in Israel for the past 8 years, working in education and as a guide. Tour guiding in Israel is a very prestigious position, I would say. It's a course that takes 2 years to complete. And it's really something that we're very proud to be, like guides all over the world, that we get to show our city and help people to fall in love with it for all the reasons that we've fallen in love with it, or not. And so we get to give that gift to other people. And of course, in this period of time, we've lost some of that gift because of Corona. So we have fewer people coming in. I don't know exactly what it's like in Germany and where you're at with your rules and your limitations. But I know here in Israel, we don't have tourists coming in, and it looks like we probably won't for a while. So the natural progression was either to find another career choice or to go virtual. Now, just because I'm sitting here having a conversation with you about going virtual does not by any means make me an expert. Like many of you, I became a tour guide because I love being outside and because I love history and because I love interacting with other people, not because I love technology and know how to use it. So there was a lot of trial and error. And for the past, I would say since mid-March, so almost 6 months now, I've transitioned almost my entire career to be virtual. There are a few times where I actually got to go outside and guide, and they were amazing. But those will be few and far between, it looks like, for the year to come. And so what I want to do with you guys now is to be able to show you a few of the different ways that you can make virtual tours meet your personality and have them still convey all that you try and convey in a tour. Most of the tours I do are for families and usually a mix with younger kids and different ages of children. And so often I will do a little bit of kitsch and I'll put my hat on as though we're outside. I'll put my badge on that I wear when I'm guiding. I always ask them what they've done to convert their living situation into a study situation. And this is something that has converted my living situation into my work situation. It's made me feel like I'm still outside. And I'm having a little bit of trouble with my computer. This is the beauty of technology. So I don't get my beautiful virtual background. But usually I'll have some sort of background that's the subject of the tour that we're going to, just so people can get a little bit of the atmosphere. So that's often how I'll prep my tours, just to get everyone in the zone so they really feel like they're walking around. Also, when I'm guiding, I love using the terminology that I would when I'm guiding, like follow me, we're gonna walk 20 minutes, you've just skipped, you've had a great nap on a 20-minute bus ride, right? I try and recreate the framework of what a tour is for the people that I'm walking around with virtually. So I wanted to be able to share with you a few different platforms that I use for different groups of people. Mostly for families, I'll use one platform. For an older group, if I'm doing a specific topic, I'll use a different platform. It's a little less animated, so you don't need to engage the kids as much, but it goes into much more detail, which adults might want. So you can use the appropriate platform and framework for whatever works for your particular tour. So I'm going to share my screen now, and I will get, I just want to make sure it's sharing the right screen with you. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? This is the true test. Thumbs up, beautiful. Okay, so one of the first tour options, I'm even gonna make it a full screen so we can, there we go, now we're in it. Okay, one of the first tour options is a tour provider called Poly, P-O-L-Y. And what Poly does, like Google Earth or like Google Maps, you can drop a pin somewhere and it'll start spinning in the spot that we're standing. So let's say I'm starting now my tour of Tel Aviv. It's a walking tour that I usually start here close to Jaffa. Now either I can manually move it, ooh, and or I can let it do its twisting thing. And you can see this little dot that I have here. So this is, I've put a little welcome note for people who are arriving. And this is one of the tour options. It will either twist on its own or you can move it around. And it will venture to the next spot that you drop. So I've now gone from the sea and we've walked 5 minutes into the city because on all my tours, snacking is essential. So we've gone to go get a snack and we've gone to a bakery to get a snack. I tell the story of the bakery, right? We keep going. And now in this one, there was a particular spot that I wanted to highlight where usually if I was standing in person, I would open up my little notebook and show them pictures, or I would play a song, right? That there's something that we do when we're guiding in person to add other layers of atmosphere to show more than just what they're looking at standing in person. So I can click on this, and what you can see is that exact kiosk that we're standing in front of right now. This is what it looked like 100 years ago. So now on their screen, just like they would in person, they're getting the dynamic of 2 different time periods in one stop. And that's a live street view, and that's the beauty of Poly, as you get to add those multiple layers. And then we'd venture down the street. The one challenge with virtual tours is there's often a delay on my screen to what you're seeing, that it might not move as smoothly, which is part of the beauty of Poly, is it rotates really slowly. So you don't necessarily miss the action because it's rotating slowly. And so even with the delay, it's not so much of an issue. I always remind my participants that much like in person, stoplights keep us from moving at the same, that the internet also kind of slows us down and speeds us up when we don't want to. So we always have to work with what we've got. And so Poly does a great job of being able to still keep us live. And one of the ways to help with the processing speed is to just close additional windows and things that you have open. Like for those of you that have WhatsApp on your computer or any other programs that you might be running simultaneously, just so it doesn't take up your bandwidth, and then you can still get as close as possible to moving at the same speed. And then we'll go to my last slide in Poly. And this is the tour that I usually do talking about Israel's independence. I just took snippets from different tours so you can get a different idea. And because you get this beautiful live street view, it's a great opportunity to also, as a tour guide, talk about the things that you would see on the streets. So it's not just about the sites, it's not just about copy and pasting a particular picture of the site, but you can also see what's going on, the buildings that are happening, the cars, what it looks like, the people, the trash, whatever it is that is an aspect that you want to hone in on, Poly gives you the opportunity to look at those things as though you're standing on the street next to them, which I really love. So Poly is one option. And now if we're moving from Poly, the next option is Google Earth. And now with Google Earth, it takes a bit of trial and error to understand how to make a tour that flows to your liking with Google Earth. There's a million videos. I've fallen into many a rabbit hole watching videos on YouTube of how to create a smoother program on Google Earth. So this is just one snippet. So the nice part about Google Earth is you get this table of contents in the bottom. So we're going to start our tour. We've now jumped to Jerusalem. You guys are getting a full Israel tour in just 20 minutes. So now we're standing outside of Jaffa Gate. And we'll get to, I can do my opening spiel that I would usually do here. And we can jump forward, getting closer to Jaffa Gate. And now I can either start moving further in using the clickies of Google Earth, or because I have a particular spot that I want to go to, I've added it to my table of contents and I can jump right there. So either you can walk and follow along, or you can walk, take 2 steps and then walk the rest of the way via your table of contents to your next stop. And this is a particular piece that I would talk about. And then with Google Earth, one of the cool things is it does a lot of zooming in and zooming out. You can make it just walking. If you're bouncing between many places within a city that perhaps would be a driving distance, or you want to bounce outside of your city and then back in, that's the fun part about Google Earth, is you really feel as though you're traveling a bit. And now what you can do here is what I've done is I've pulled up a few of the things that I would potentially include, either to talk about or to show pictures of. One thing that you can include here is it can either stay in this small box or you can make it larger, but you can play a video, which this is when it's like thinking overtime right now. Okay, you can play, this is the video, and I like it because it shows a little bit about what the particular space looked like in 1917. And so then you can see it come alive, but in a different time period, which is quite cool. Okay, or you can show pictures. Like if you see in this smaller picture, it's the same gate, just a difference of 100 years. This is when General Allenby came through. So, and you can ask them, what things do you see missing? What things are different? So you can get a bit more interaction, or you can use the poll feature on Zoom and ask questions to keep them entertained throughout the trip. Maybe there's something that you said earlier that you want to quiz them on, or see if they're still with you, right? All of the humor and gimmicks and personality that make us great guides, there are ways to incorporate that into Zoom. Whether it be through pictures, whether it be through video, through any of the features, polling, whiteboard. I like to use also, you can have them draw things. If any of you do a graffiti tour, I've done a lot of graffiti tours on Zoom, and I've used resources like Padlet or like Mural. These are 2 kind of shared whiteboard spaces where you can ask participants to draw their own pieces of graffiti, or right, you can make it a bit more interactive. So you don't feel like you're talking just to a screen. You really see that they're people and moving and doing things as we go. So that's part of the fun of this space. And then I've chosen another picture that is of this gate and of this entrance here. And then we're zooming further into the city. So Google Earth is going to take us out and throw us back in. And this is a bit further into the old city, just for your point of reference as guides. We came from about just beyond those buildings there. But you get this great opportunity to bounce around a city and kind of make it your own. And either using the Google arrows, using your own mouse pad, whatever works for you. That way you can engage with one of these 2 options. And then one of the last ones that I'll show you, and then I think I'll open it up for some questions, is a system called Poly. Okay, I was testing to make sure we were all up to date earlier. So Poly is, for those of you who are familiar with Microsoft PowerPoint or any of the PowerPoint programming, Poly is very much like that. It's just a bit more dynamic. I will say that if you have a MacBook, it's not as user-friendly as it is on a PC, but it is an amazing, amazing system. And what I love about Poly is it allows you, unlike some of the other presentation options like Prezi, what Prezi offers you, unlike Poly and unlike Google Earth, is you really get to choose and create the path that people go on. And you get this dynamic animation. It's great. I like it to use it a lot with kids because it really feels like you're moving, and you can add different layers of pictures and video and things like that. So right now we'd go inside, we'd look at what it was like in the past, right? We'd go in further. Of course, we stop for snacks, then we pick them out, right? There's a theme. Then we'd get in closer. This is just a street view of what it looks like at the time. Then I go back in time, what that intersection used to look like when the city was started. And we bounce around and I can layer different pictures. And then here we've gone to Independence Hall. And then I can include all the maps and things like that. And then we've gone actually inside the building, something you can't do necessarily on Poly or on Google Earth unless you add a layer of a picture. And then we've gone back in time and seen what this space looks like when there was a declaration being given in this space. So you get a lot more dynamic with Prezi. And then this is the 100th anniversary. So we get a lot more to see here. And then I'll show you one of the other ways that I've done virtual tours and how I've incorporated into the ever-changing times. It's a horrific freeze frame. So if you're more technologically savvy, you can work on the freeze frame of the video itself. But there was a time right before we went into full closure where I walked around and did virtual tours, usually in the morning in the US or for different time periods for different communities where there was still light outside here in Israel. And I would walk around and someone would carry a camera and follow me. Made me feel very, very famous. But ultimately, it allowed me to show things in live time, what was going on here in Israel, especially in the beginning when the streets were very empty. It was fascinating for people who had been before. It was really a unique way to do the touring. And what I did was I recorded it. And so now I had a half-hour graffiti tour that I did, recorded of me walking on the street. Now you'll see, yeah, it's a horrific freeze frame. What you'll see is if I mute it, and you can pick out different snippets and walk where you don't see double of yourself, or you can go through and pre-record a route that you'd like to take and not do the voice recording over it. I've chosen to just mute the tour that I did here. But it allows you to have kind of live video of your own choosing and your own route and using the guiding tools perhaps that you would like shown in particular places. And then you can cut in snippets of your own pictures, your own videos into your tour itself so they can see kind of you in action, not just in your own living rooms. So hopefully that gives you an idea of, I'll stop sharing now. So that can give you an idea of some of the different ways in which you can make your tour flavor come to life. And now I'd love to be a resource as much as I can be to answer some questions. I saw there was one in the chat and I apologize for not answering in the moment. That's one of the other things during a virtual tour. As far as questions, I'll often have people use either raise their hand so I can physically see if I'm looking at it as a gallery share of faces, or I'll tell people that I'll check back to the chat box periodically and build it into my tour the same way you would ask if anyone has any questions when you leave a site. That way no one feels forgotten, or depending on how many people, I would either if it's a few people, a more intimate tour, I would offer it as an option. And if they're not kids, because it's harder with kids, I would offer it as an option to unmute yourself and ask a question. And if it's a larger tour, then I use the chat box much more. Okay, how often do you go back to the video of yourself in your living room during the tour? So usually I'll have a background. My computer is acting up today for some reason. And for that, I recommend, I don't know if Alessia has this because her screen looks phenomenal. But Alessia, it really looks like you're in Central Park. There's, even if you hang up a sheet behind your presentation space, if it has a flat space, even a green sheet would be ideal. You can invest in one and hang it up in your background, and then you get a really smooth, nice background, virtual background, so you can really create an atmosphere for your tour. I don't go back very often. I try to use screen share and use that as my main background. As far as charging for my tours, I'll usually use one of two options. Either I've reached out to past clients, I've posted on my Facebook page, or to my running list of clients that I've reached out to them saying, listen, the world is weird, and I've transitioned to being virtual. If you know of friends who are missing Israel and want an opportunity to tour, here are ways that they can come see Israel with me. And so I've offered some general tours if there was enough sign up. I've gotten feedback from different communities who are looking for something specific. And so for that, I've created something specific. And so my prices vary on what kind of tour I'm doing. If it's a general tour, I have one blanket price because often I'll get to reuse that tour. If I'm trying to do something that is a bit more specialized for a community or for a family, the price will change because the amount of time that it takes to prep a virtual tour is very different, especially after you've been out in the field for many years. You have your script down and you have your stops and you have your kind of kitsch, and you have to relearn it for Zoom to some extent, which is hard and it takes time. And for that, there's a cost, 100%. I do to some extent price similar to my real tour. Originally, I think I started pricing a bit lower because I wasn't sure, like many people, how long this was going to last. And I wasn't sure what the tour future was going to look like. And a lot of clients, I've even had repeat clients come back and say that they want something different for their community. And they've said, we understand if the price might have changed because you've created a broader business out of it. So it does fluctuate. Much like I'm sure when you were a younger tour guide, things were priced differently. And with years of experience, you've developed a different background. And now I'll see what other questions we have. Do you have time slots reserved for tours over the month with a schedule and you find you're working at a specific time and day of the week? It's a great question. It's something as guides, we kind of thrive for schedule because there is a lot of downtime and peak season. There's a lot of on time. So up until now, I haven't. I will tell you one thing that has started in Israel because we just went through a really rough, what would have been peak season for many guides, like all around the world where it's currently summer. We went through a rough season as far as scheduling and cancellations and things like that. So there were a group of guides that got together and even decided to create a booking platform run by guides that was going to be a space where different guides can feed in and offer different tours on a pay-as-you-go platform. Where it's very clear, much like the free tours platform, it's clear from the beginning that there's the understanding that this is a free tour, but that guides are in limbo right now, and we're still trying to stick to do what we love without having to make a full-on career shift, and that we appreciate anything and everything that you can contribute. And with that, people will sign up for, there's a schedule on the website of a whole series of tours, usually about 3 a week, offered by different guides. And it's been a nice format for guides to really specialize in something that they're passionate about, and offered a few times in this format. So that's one option that a bunch of guides have gotten together to do. And it also means that whatever money you make goes directly to the guide, because you're not going through a bigger company. It's an organization of guides who are looking out for one another, which is really nice. Much like what you guys are doing here, which is amazing. This kind of platform where you get to continue to learn together and do what we love, even in a time when it's a bit tricky. Are you not doing live broadcast walking tours outside? Is it forbidden, or do folks not want that? I haven't gone back to it since things started to open up. Also because of the current situation here in Israel, also because of the heat and the hours, it becomes a bit more challenging to be able to walk around. It is really nice as far as being able, if you can work it out with time zones. I did it a little bit for summer camps that were trying to create tours as an activity as part of their camp. So we did go out and go live and walk around. It's also just harder to manage as far as chat and questions and things like that. When I did it, I had someone walk around with me with the camera, and I also appointed someone within the group to be responsible for reading out the chat questions. That way I could answer them live when touring. So it was really more of a logistics challenge. And currently, because of the numbers here in Israel, so I've limited my time outside. I really hope to be able to go back to that, because I think it is fun for people to see things live as though they really are on a tour. And I think 100% it is worth trying. That was my first experience in virtual touring, was walking around outside. And actually, an hour before it started, when I was test running it, that's when they sent out the memo in Israel that we were going into full closure. So I spoke to the organizer and I said, this is a great tour, but it's going to be a while before we can do this again. So I highly recommend starting out, and if you feel comfortable doing it that way, it's a great way to really feel like you're back out in the field. The only thing that's weird is you're talking to a screen still. And you can't see the screens the way I can now. So I can see smiling faces and I can see people engaging. And so I can work off of your energy, where when I'm walking outside with someone following with the camera, I can't see the faces behind the screen. So it's harder to engage and even create that kind of experience that you do as a guide with your tour participants. So I think, how'd I do on time? Woohoo! All right. Alessia, I'm excited to learn from you.
That was absolutely perfect. Thank you so much, Shira. That was really enlightening.
My pleasure.
I guess we'll hop straight into Alessia, who's doing something a little bit different. And again, if you want to park questions in the chat, you can. If you want to just hold on to after the presentation and ask, then you can. But thank you again, Shira. And Alessia, take it away.
No. Can you hear me now? Okay. I muted myself so that I wouldn't disturb Shira before. By the way, that was amazing. You say you're not technological. You're much more technological than I am. As you can see, I'm in Central Park, virtually Central Park, because in reality, I'm in Queens, where I live in Kew Gardens, Queens. But again, as Shira said, you can probably get from my accent, I'm not a native of New York. I'm actually Italian. I've been living in New York for many years, though, since 2001. And for me, it was kind of an adventure, because I came right after September 11. I wanted to do an experience, life experience. It was supposed to last only 3 months, and still here after almost it's like 19 years now. I'm still here. And I fell in love with this beautiful city, and also with one person who's my husband. And I did many things here. I mean, as many people who visit and decide to stay in New York, of course, I worked in restaurants, I worked in a bar, I did Italian lessons, I did many jobs. I found a really good job then in Ferragamo, where I worked for 3.5 years on Fifth Avenue. So that was a great experience. But of course, then afterwards, I had my child, so it was kind of difficult to maintain the very strict hours that we have in the United States. And so I decided to leave that job, and I started more like a more creative career. I opened up my, virtual Etsy shop on the internet, where I was selling handmade accessories for children. And that lasted a little bit. And then, of course, I fell in love with touring, and that also happened was like just by chance. A friend of mine started to study for the license, which it's much shorter than 3 years, like in Israel. That sounds more like in Florence, where I come from. You have to study for 3 years before to become a tour guide. You just have to learn a big book and take a test. It lasts like 8 hours, but then you're done. You are a tour guide. And I thought it was the perfect fit for my lifestyle, because it gave me the opportunity of really adjust my hours and kind of, schedule my mom's life and my professional life. So that was great. Plus, I love this city, and I love to show people. I love to be with people and meet new people from everywhere in the world. I'm always very curious of where people are from, what's their, customs and their food. I'm passionate about food, especially, and so I really love this job. And so I started to work for a company, and after a couple of years, I opened my own little company. It's called Barefoot New York. And I chose this name Barefoot for 2 reasons. First of all, there's a very nice movie. I don't know if you ever watched it, Barefoot in the Park. It's one of my favorite movies. But the other one is because I wanted to give a more real and true perspective on New York, like when you are barefoot in contact really with ground. So I wanted to give less touristy version of New York, because especially New York is such a well-known city all around the world through movies, through TV series, and there's a million of guidebooks that you can find about New York, but they all kind of give a certain facade of New York, and they're kind of repetitive. And I wanted to show the people the New York that I fell in love with. And so I was trying to create tours that were more like a little different. Of course, I offered classic tours, of course, Statue of Liberty, Brooklyn Bridge, Central Park. But I wanted to do more like, for example, I also have graffiti street art tours in different neighborhoods of New York, 2 in Brooklyn and 1 in Manhattan. And then I did immigrations tours. I did food tours. I have a very nice tour that's was one of my most booked. It was the Little Italy, the real Little Italy of New York, which is in the Bronx and not downtown Manhattan. And it was food tasting. Again, food is a big thing in my life. So even when I did other parts of New York, I always tried to find a special food that we could introduce into the tour. And really, that's how it started. And I've been doing this for like 5 years until March, when everything stopped. And for me, it was really difficult because New York was hit later than Europe. I mean, the United States was hit later than Europe, and New York was hit really hard. And I was kind of terrified. I was not one of those people that didn't believe, that thought it was just a normal flu. Because I had the experience of people that I knew in Italy and in Europe, and they had horrible cases. And so I knew there was nothing to joke about. So we locked ourselves in the house practically. And after a while, I needed to find something to do because I realized I don't know how long it's going to last. And we thought maybe, August is going to open up again. Then we thought maybe in September it's going to open up again. And now it doesn't look like, I'm not sure, not even for Christmas. So I had to find a way. And she said she's not technological, but she's more technological than me. I started to do YouTube videos, trying to kind of help the Italian people, my clients. They had to cancel their tours and travels to New York because of the pandemic, to kind of console them, feel them better, have them to feel better, and giving them a little bit of history, a taste of New York, so that they could feel prepared for when they will come later on. Because I always told them, don't worry, you're going to come to New York one day. It just postponed, and feel positive, because many of them were really, oh my gosh, they were devastated they couldn't come to New York anymore. All the plans, they were destroyed. And so I started to do YouTube videos of different parts. I did Coney Island, I did Central Park, Brooklyn Bridge, the Bronx, and it was difficult because, as Shira said before, one thing is talking to a live public where you can interact. You can, as a tour guide, you are almost like in between a teacher and an actor. So you kind of feed up from the energy of the people. And when that gets, you don't have that anymore, you only have a screen in front of you, or you have just a camera because you're recording, it's kind of difficult. So the first times it was like, it took me days to just record like 20 minutes of video. And I used the method that I used to use when I led tours. So I was speaking, telling the story, and having images, historical images, or actual images, actual pictures of the site, of the characters, the main characters of my stories, because I like to tell stories a lot, and I focus more on the stories of the people who made New York. Like, for example, just the Brooklyn Bridge. I like to focus more on the history of the people who really made the Brooklyn Bridge, materially constructed Brooklyn Bridge, and also like the first woman engineer, which Emily Roebling. And so a little feminist in me always tried to come out. And so I like really to tell stories. And also later on, I decided to do virtual tours, but not like Shira does, because that is actually really good. I'm starting to now build something like that. I started to use PowerPoint. So doing PowerPoint, I focused more on children. And because many of my colleagues started to do the same thing for adults. And, I felt like maybe the competition was too harsh. I mean, New York, there must have been like a million tour guides. And so I said, maybe I can do something for children and in Italian, because I thought maybe I could propose that to schools and to Italian children. They're probably bored at home. They don't know what to do. And so trying to find a format that was fun, but also educational. And I started to do presentations of these tours using, again, pictures and videos, introducing with PowerPoints. And that actually went well up until, of course, the end of June, when school ended. I had few schools that used my virtual tours as the school trip of the year for the kids. Many of them, of course, had to cancel their school trips. And so, or extracurriculum thing for the school. And there were more children, like, I would say like 10, 12 years old. And they were really passionate. Many of them booked other tours, multiple tours to show. And they thought that maybe that could be a good program even for the future when school open up. So if you want, I can show you a couple of those, but it's just PowerPoint. It's nothing like fancy like Shira showed before. So can I share? Because I didn't see if I could share or not. Let me see. I can share, right? So share screen. Share. Going on, I told the stories and I tried to make it more fun for the children so that they could be more entertained and less bored. And using the majority of the picture I use, so like I would say 98% the whole picture that I take when I'm around. And so, you know, telling the structure of the bridge and comparing with also other bridges in New York, and of course telling the stories, and of course introducing then the people who contributed to the building of the bridge, and the famous Emily Robligan was saying before that I kind of portray like a superhero because she had to go against many odds of the time and beliefs of the people, for example. And so let me stop sharing this, which is, as you can see, I'm much less technological than Shira. Where is the stop sharing? Okay, stop sharing. Okay, and so, I mean, children seemed very entertained by that. And in the one, for example, of Central Park, also introduced a few videos and the famous song of Imagine, because in Central Park there is a commemoration of John Lennon, who was killed almost in front of the strawberry fields garden, where, you know, there is a beautiful mosaic that says Imagine. So I played the music, and of course, as being kids at 10 years old, nobody knew the song, which was really shocking. But, you know, we remedied that. And so that's more or less was the format that I picked, and I'm still using that. Now I want to start doing more like Shira, in the sense that going outside and record, and then kind of do a montage at home. Because I'm not in New York, I mean, not in Manhattan, where most things that people want to see and visit are. I'm in Queens, so to get to Manhattan, I had to take a train, and I was kind of not very comfortable up to now to take trains, because of course the cases are kind of falling down, but you never know. It's the train being always so packed, and for many people, it's one of the places where it's easier to get contaminated. And so I now probably going to start, and I have a few tours that I used to lead in person. One of that is the subway art tour. And because many people don't realize that, yes, art in New York is everywhere, from the street to the museum to the beautiful building, but it's also underground. The underground subway is full of beautiful mosaics and different, even sculpture. And that was one of the tours that I had also before. But I have to say, in this case, this format is much better than being in person, because it would takes a long time, being so big, New York, from going from point A to point B. Instead, thanks to the video, it's just a few seconds. So it's really easy. You don't have to take 3 trains to get to a point. You just click and you're there. So it's not, in this case, it's much better to do it virtually. And so that's something that I would want to do. In my case, I'm answering to a question that was given to Shira about the live filming, the live tour, the really live tour of New York. It would be very difficult to do it exactly because it's big. So if it's just one, let's say one small neighborhood, you could do it because you probably can walk around and still see things while you're filming. But for example, if I have to lead the tour of the Bronx that I used to do, it would be kind of challenging because to get to 2 points that you want to show, there's a lot of walking where you don't really see much. And one thing is like when you're physically there, you kind of have an experience. As I said, you feed off the energy of the people, but looking at someone that just walks on the sidewalk and around you see just normal buildings, it's really not that appealing. So for me, that I don't think that it would be something that I could do. But certainly the going around and filming and then kind of mixing that up with the usual pictures that I used to use before with my iPad, it's definitely something that I would want to try. And that's it. Do you have any questions? Thank you. Okay, so let me see, because I don't know which one. Are these all for me or they are also mixed with hers, with Shira's? No, this is hers.
I think some new ones came in while you were chatting. I know that under the name Berlin Guides Association, there's a few new ones.
Yeah, so you mentioned Train as a Guide in New York. Was that with Ganic? I'm a part of Ganic, and I've been part of Ganic for, I think, probably 4 years, 4 or 5 years. No, I did not train with Ganic. I started to work with this tour company that also had my same view on how to show New York. They have beautiful tours on also on like slavery in New York. They have the Underground Railroad, many other tours like the gospel tours, and I learned so much from them. That actually that was my school. So I learned very much from this company. I still work for them, and Ganic helped me very much to meet people, to meet fellow tour guides. They run amazing farm tours, so tours where you go on and other tour guides lead tours of different parts of New York, and that helps you also discover new things. Everybody always learning. This is a business where you learn every day and all the time. You can always learn from someone else because everybody have a different taking for different topics. And also Ganic is helping me right now because they also did many webinars about virtual touring, the new techniques also for when we will start again to physically do tours with new technology. There are no more speakers, but through the iPhones. And they started also, that actually is airing today, tour your own city. It's something, I think something like Shira said that she started with her fellow tour guides. It's a platform where tour guides are part of Ganic. They offer their tours and you can book a tour that you like through one of these tour guides. So they give you much more exposure because of course they have many more contacts than you probably could have. And so that's great. And I really like that. I can't say anything bad about this association. It's fantastic, run by fantastic people. And then question for both of you, do you have an idea how many tour guides in your cities moved into offering virtual tours? A general percentage guess. Are you popular with guides? Are they popular with the guides? So I would say probably 60-70% of the people, New York, the tour guides are doing virtual tours. I say that because we have also to count people that are not very good with technology, so they're cut out. Older people, there's a lot of people, they're very experienced in New York. They have a beautiful stories to tell, but of course the age sometimes gets in the way with technology, so they don't feel like they can go and be up to that. And people that just are kind of busy doing other things, because it's been very challenging for everybody, especially if someone has small children. Many New Yorkers, it's incredible. I just read yesterday 13,000 apartments are vacant in Manhattan. A lot of people just fled. They just left and went in the woods someplace. I have no idea. Like in places they are away from the city. So you have to take into account of all of that. And when you are far from the energy of the city, you probably don't even have much inspiration to start that. So that's what I would say. And they're popular with the guides. Yeah, I mean, some of them. You mentioned work with children. What ages do you interact with the kids in the meetings, or also keep the audio muted and open in certain points? So yes, what I do at the beginning, kind of get to know each other. Our appointments were usually like 1 hour. So they're like a little bit of chit chat to get to know a little bit each other. And then I mute everybody just because they're children. So they start talking, they start, you know, someone passes by, they have to say something, and that be very distracting. But I have the gallery view. So if someone has a question, can either write in the chat or raise their hands, and I interrupt and I ask, because sometimes they missed a step, or they didn't understand what I was saying. And so that is helpful. But usually, let's say my presentation will be 25, 30 minutes, and then the rest is questions. Because if there's one thing that kids have, are questions. They are so curious, and they will ask you anything. And many of the questions are so intelligent, so sharp, that surprises you. I mean, it's incredible. Sometimes like, oh my gosh, is the child just asked me that? So that's what I do usually. I open up the mics for the Q&A after on, so we can have a discussion. And I even can add things because they're so curious that they want to know more. Sometimes I kind of synthesize a little, because I don't want to get bored, because children get bored quite easily. So yeah, I'm trying to get the essential and get it in a way that they can be interesting. But sometimes they are so taken by the stories that they ask me more things, so I can go on back to the points that they are curious about and expand a little more my speech, let's say. My last question for both of you, promise. It's okay. Do you still offer local tours to local tourists rather than their partners? And could you expect to live from combining virtual tours and local tours, or virtual tours alone with international mass tourism? So I'm not yet so comfortable into going into the city and meeting people. I've been asked by the agency that I still work with to start for Americans, essentially not New Yorkers, but Americans. And I'm a little uncomfortable because, as you might know, New Yorkers were somehow more careful. So our like line kind of flattened now, but other part of the country, they're not as well behaved. And so let's say, like nicely said. And so I am not comfortable because, of course, unless you screen everybody and say where you come from, who have you been with? And I heard stories about a couple of my colleagues, they're also part of GANIC, that started to do a tour, 1 or 2 tours, and they had a horrible experience because they had almost to quarrel with their clients that didn't want to wear a mask. So that's something that I do not want to do. I do not want to start a tour and start already quarreling with people that don't want to wear masks, because that's also, if it's a group tour, you kind of endanger not only your image, but also the experience of everybody else. And you afterwards don't have the same attitude in leading the tour. So that would be, afterward, the results would be less than perfect. And so I'm a little uncomfortable. Definitely, I can't wait to start doing that again, because as Shira said, that's the best part of, that's why we pick this job, this profession, because we like to be with people, in contact with people. And when this energy is kind of missing, it's very, very difficult. And yes, you know, the virtual part of, thank God there is computers, the internet, and all these new programs that allow you to do virtual tours, but naturally it's not the same. I would definitely, in the future, combine the two, just because it gives me the opportunity to work, as I said, with Italian schools, with something that I really enjoyed. And of course, nobody in Italy can afford a school trip to New York. So that would be really, really good to do. And I would be really glad to continue that. But I don't think I would substitute one to another. I think my time's up.
All right, it actually looks like Georgia's crashed. She said her battery was dying.
Oh.
Unfortunately. Maybe there are actually two questions that I had there that Shira might be open to answering as well, that we could perhaps finish on.
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all, Alessia, thank you. It was, I missed New York, and that was amazing. And now I want to tour New York with you.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Let me know when you know it would be possible again. It would be my pleasure.
Perfect. So, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the two questions that you had for both of us. I know in Israel, some of the tour guides there's been less of a switch to virtual as a regular part of our touring process, because there's been a big push from within the country. As a country that loves to go away over the summer break, they've really pushed for internal tourism, saying that certain parks should be your attractions that you go to. Instead of Europe, go to this city. That they're trying to really build up internal tourism. And so a lot of people have started guiding more. They've relied less on the virtual switch, but more on turning to internal tourism. So that kind of combines your two questions. I, much like Alessia, am still struggling and don't always feel as comfortable to go out. Because of the heat, not everyone wears the masks always as regularly. It's harder to tour in person with the mask, and it just really kind of changes the dynamic. Also, the smile and the interaction with the person, even as weird as it is on Zoom, it's much weirder in a mask. So, and it still takes a learning curve to get used to, I guess. So for me, I am also a bit challenged to start to make that switch. I will probably warm up to it more. And also, much like Alessia, I live not in the happening city. So if I go out, it's not necessarily to tour the local, to guide the local community, but it's to tour for myself, to take the pictures or to get the video clips that I need to create a meaningful tour experience, even from my house. And it also allows me to work to create things for schools, like Alessia was saying, because even the communities that used to do school trips or summer trips to Israel aren't doing them anymore, and they're looking for something to fill that void and still create that experience. So I've been really trying to mentally and physically transition to making that just as meaningful for myself and for participants. But we'll see where it will go. I don't think I can hold the profession the way I did full-time doing things virtually, because the schedule is somewhat inconsistent. The money is a bit different. But for my soul as a guide, it feeds my soul and makes me happy. And for as long as I can survive on that and hope that tourism comes back and doing some odd things here and there to fill in the time, that's my game plan. So.
Well, thank you to both of you, I guess.
Oh, thank you.
It's been a pleasure. I think I pestered you with 1 or 2 questions myself and you answered them all. So that's exactly what I was hoping for. And I think probably useful for everybody else. I was saying thank you in the comments. So there you go. Yeah, Sean, Pamela, Nick. Great. Well, we've got the recording online. We'll stick it up there as well and make sure we tag you both so that you can we can promote your tours there as well. Maybe join some in future as well, depending how things go.
Definitely, definitely.
Always welcome.
Thank you so much for including me in this webinar. It was really, really interesting and such a pleasure to meet Shira. It's like, you know, New Jerseyans, how you call it? How you say New Jerseyans? In Israel.
Yeah. No, really, really thank you also for having me as well. It just, guiding can be really lonely, and now that it's virtual, you're even more alone in some ways, and this is really amazing to see how different communities of guides have come together. So thank you so much.
So we try to do with our association as well, bring people together and see what comes of it after that. Where it goes from there, who knows? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
have a good
you.
day.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.